Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee. Such an innocuous statement that the humans put it in stickers. They found it humorous. Brian thought it humorous too, but in his own Brian way. Unbeknownst to me, one of those stickers found its way to my back. I barely had time to leave my working station before a squad of heavily armed enforcers surrounded me. You see, while coffee is an innocuous beverage to humans, to us it is a potent stimulant that shuts down our higher cognitive functions and overcharges our circulatory stream with a substance our bodies reserve for life and death situations. We are left with unconceivable strength and no sense of how to use it. When the AI patrolling the ship identified what it suspected to be an intoxicated individual, it issued a highest priority alert to the special forces kept on standby to deal with this exact situation. For one in my presumed condition, there is no arguing and there is no hesitation, or the consequences could be dire. And so the enforcers did what they were trained to do. They extended the pole to me, tightened the loop around my neck, and dragged me into the ground face down, next inserting the rectal tube that pumped the fast-acting tranquilizer necessary to put me out of action. When I woke up later that day, belly down because rectal tube, I was fuming. Literally. Our bodies produce heat when we suffer emotional distress, barely noticeable in ordinary conditions, but there was nothing ordinary about my state. I was furious, so much so that before I even regained full consciousness, I melted the bed I was lying on and fell face first onto the medbay floor. When I got to my quarters, I didn't even bother changing, running straight to the capsule that kept my atomic blade. I broke it, retrieved the ceremonial weapon, and went, medrobes and all, my sore ass in full display, straight to meet the only one I knew could have pulled such a stunt, for a duel to the death. Once I found him, he uttered the most heinous of words. April Fools! An ancient Terran tradition, which freed the humans to be as vicious to each other as they desired. How such a species survived past the point of holding sticks will forever elude me. I was ready to slash and be slashed to death, but a mandatory seminar on cultural sensitivity? No thank you. I took my blade back, ordered a new capsule, and let things be. That is, until the next solar cycle. For obvious reasons, the rotation of Earth around its star is not standard time measurement around the galaxy. Add to that the fact our hibernation cycles don't match anything on the Terran home system, and it's easy to see how I missed the time for the cursed ritual to repeat itself. So imagine my surprise when, leaving the discharge room, I found my way back to my station filled with colourful balloons, floating at different heights on the edges of strings. Not much of a problem for a human, but when you have a crystalline body full of pointy edges, it becomes really hard to hide from your colleagues that you spent the longest of time expelling the mother of all crystals into the recycling system. Turns out I was worried about the wrong thing. As the first balloon popped in my face, I discovered it was filled with a sparkly, iron-filled powder the humans call glitter. Since my crystalline structure is prone to accumulate static electricity, it becomes pretty clear the state I found myself when I reached my station, 87 balloons later. This was war. I could not hit Brian for his cultural shield, but nothing prevented me from stepping into the shield. If the Terran custom allowed them to be vicious once every solar cycle, so could I, once I adopted the cultural practice from my Terran colleague. I had the computer point the next April's Fool in my calendar. It felt right in the middle of my hibernation cycle. This could be a strength. Brian would not expect a strike from a man in his slumber, but I had to set it up in advance. Some more research, and I learned early into the fateful day we would enter a particularly temperamental nebula, effectively isolating us from the rest of the galaxy. I set the plans in motion. The Galamon cluster mines a particular element, only found within one of its moons. Not anything of particular value, except to one particular company. That manufactures one particular perfume, the only one Brian wears. The dwindling reserves of Galamon made continued extraction of the element unviable, and without enough demand, no nanoassembler took an interest in synthesizing it, the perfume made from it being discontinued as a result. So said the fake report I put together, to be released in the first hours of April Fool's, where it would be ignored by the whole crew, except Brian, whose newsfeed was sure to pick it up. I was guaranteed to cause emotional distress, perhaps some failed experiments with other fragrances, with any luck. I might even ruin a few of his dates, maybe irreparably damage the whole of his mating history. One could dream. And so I went into my slumber, with dreams of vindication, only to wake up in a nightmare of my own making. The debacle that ensued taught me an important lesson. A Kellon on caffeine is a meteor, ready to cause an extinction-level event on an unsuspecting planet. But a desperate human is a quasar spinning wildly, raining death rays in all directions, sterilizing whole star systems light years away. After taking the bait I left him, a despair-filled Brian hacked the mainframe of our merchant fleet and hijacked 3/4 of its processing power to his personal AI, which he tasked with combing each and every corner of the star web after all the perfume it could find, the instant we left the nebula. Upon reaching the next supply station, Brian found a cargo slightly larger than he expected, way past what crew members were allowed to carry on board. Unable to discard it without the quartermaster's stamp, he went into full panic mode and hushed to find a place, anywhere quiet and undisturbed, where he could stash his clandestine cargo, acquired by less than legal means. As I regained the first grasps of consciousness, I was immediately assaulted by the stench of the unholy mix of oak and fresh-peeled orange. I couldn't identify the source. It was everywhere. My numb senses couldn't tell for sure, but my mind knew. It had trespassed the boundaries of my skin, bedded itself in my organs, within my circulatory stream, into my very soul. For the next 3 agonizing rotations, as my body slowly regained its functions, I was left there, paralyzed, drowned in the overpowering smell, marinating in the gaseous solution. There was no light, no sound, or even the touch of my bed. I could only hear the smell, see the smell, be the smell. Once my body regained full function, Brian was on his knees, mumbling incoherent, pledging to cater to any and all of my desires, if only I could keep his secret. I mustered the only response I could. Dude, get the fuck off my bathroom. As the waves of the sonic shower hit me, strong enough to cause cracks in my crystalline structure. A painful but necessary procedure, if I was to exercise my being of the woody citric stain. I realized now I was a fool. Brian was a veteran soldier with a lifetime experience in the sadistic art of prank. I was but a fresh conscript thrown into the front lines, dreaming of winning the whole war in a single heroic charge, only to become target practice for someone who actually knew what they were doing. I looked for Brian. He was already expecting me, hearing from afar the clanks of my cracked skin. I took the only opportunity I would ever have for an honourable peace. I promised not to reveal his contraband, as long as he would get his chemical weapons away from me ASAP, and never again target me in his pranks. He accepted. And so the war was over. Much time has passed since then, and peace has been kept. I was free of Brian's sadism, and within time, I even learned to appreciate it from the outside, where the view is much better. But I was denied my reckoning, and every time I see the day of the fall approaching, I wonder, after so long, haven't my wits blossomed to satisfaction? Haven't I observed the master enough to best him? To reach out for my long overdue revenge? But then, once again, the ghost of the stench assaults my nostrils, and I remember, another day of the fall is but another opportunity to make yourself a fool.